Well, I'm sure most of you heard of Pacsun. We've been around since 1980. We started out as a surf skate brand, and that's probably what a lot of you know about us. But we've actually changed quite a bit. I mean, right now we have 315 stores in 44 states and Puerto Rico. We're headquartered in Anaheim because when we started out, it was surf and skate, and that's where Vans, Billabong, Quicksilver, everybody was in Orange County. But we've evolved. We're now a lifestyle brand for the Gen Z consumer, or what we call the emerging consumer. So we don't really chase trends. What we do is we try to be everywhere where our consumer's at and to be the authoritative voice of culture. So when a customer starts to shop, when they become of age, they come to Pacsun and they know what they buy is going to be cool. So we are more than just a brand. So we are involved in the community. Locally, we have a partnership with the LA Rams where we help disadvantaged youth. We also do quite a bit with philanthropy and outreach. So Emma Chamberlain is, she's one of the biggest YouTubers. I think she has 11 million followers on YouTube and about 16 million on Instagram. We have a partnership with her, and she actually did a video for us on youth mental health, and it had, literally, tens of millions of views. We also do partnerships and to develop brands. So we have our own brands, but we've worked with Kendall and Kylie. We had a 10-year partnership with them. ASAP Rocky was actually our creative director 2 years ago. Everyone knows Jerry Lorenzo, he's a cultural icon, and he's basically he developed the Fear of God. So we developed the Fear of God Essentials, which is kind of the entry-level brand for Fear of God. We're a partner with him. We have a joint venture with Jerry, and we have the manufacturing license for them. We've also signed a deal with Formula One. So we are the licensee for them worldwide. And Reese Cooper, which is an up-and-coming designer, basically, we've just signed a deal with him. But we look at us, we're hyper-focused on being where our customer's at. So, I'm proud to say we've launched actually 2 games on Roblox. We just launched one last week called Pacsun the Tycoon, and it's had amazing engagement. We've also launched NFTs. We had an NFT launch called Mall Rats, one for every store. We sold them on OpenSeas, and we actually donated the proceeds to charity. And we're actually the first fashion brand in our segment to accept cryptocurrency on our website. Now, you might say, well, do I get a lot of sales for it? Not really. It's the penetration in the low single digits. But basically, makes us authentic. You look at 90% of cryptocurrency purchases are actually done with Gen Z and millennials. So this fits right up our alley. So, we're very, very focused on being where our customer's at. So if you look at Instagram, we have 2.6 million followers and growing, where most brands are actually seeing a decline. Facebook, of course, we're there, but Facebook is becoming, the platform for mommies, and probably not our customer. But still, we engage there. And most importantly is TikTok. We were an early adopter of TikTok. We have over 2 million followers, which is more than even Shein and a lot of our competitors. And we've got a great partnership with them. We just did a live stream right at the Super Bowl. And we were a pilot with them to actually launch e-commerce. And this means that they didn't have to, most e-commerce, like if you look at Shopify, how they're integrated with TikTok, you actually have to check out on your website. Here, you could actually check out directly without leaving the application. And so, I'm excited to say that, and I'm going to talk to you about Douyin, which is the TikTok of China, which we've done quite a bit with. But we're really excited because we think that basically TikTok is going to become a very, very profitable e-commerce channel.
No, and I think, to your point on the marketing side, right? And I think from generational behavior, we study a lot of data on the globally front, right? We put out a survey, and I think when you start to look at data, trying to just feed everyone here with what it is that we're seeing across the spectrum. Instagram and call it Facebook have been dominant for quite some time, right? I think when you start to see the up and coming generations of what the adoption has been, TikTok has made a huge push and starting to challenge where Instagram has always been, and I'm a big Facebook user, so I guess that kind of dates me then on that one, Michael.
Yeah. So basically, we were using border-free for a number of years, and we really wanted to elevate our international offering because although international isn't, a big portion of our business, we feel that's where the growth can come from. But one of the big things is you have to eliminate the friction, and you need to add more currencies and payment options because one of the biggest frictions in checking out international is people want to look at what does it cost in their currency. People aren't really good doing FX math and looking at the payment options that are really localized for their environment. And then tax and duties. Every country has different rules. So there's de minimis rules that say in certain countries, like coming to the U.S., if it's below $800, you don't pay duties. And so this varies for country to country, so we want to make sure that we leverage basically those rules to the customer's benefit and our benefit. And then, of course, there's shipping options because shipping international is expensive. And so we want to make sure that we have actually the most cost-effective and customer appropriate shipping options. And then reverse logistics is a big issue because people like to return stuff, and you have to make sure that you can accommodate them, otherwise you end up with poor reviews. And then local pricing, we'll get on that in more detail, but do you include the duties? Do you include the shipping in the price? Do you include the VAT and tax, or do you separate it? And actually that varies country to country. And then you basically want to look at each market, and what I really like about Global-e is they've got a number of customers, and so it's not just me wandering in the dark and saying, well, hey, what's going to work? It's really, hey, you guys tell me what works best among your customer base.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you hit it right, and I'll get into a bit of some of the data elements to it, but I think when you look at the overall engagement with each one of the brands, I mean, you hit on it, right? Every single market, every single region when you're looking to enter, even down to through the macro headwinds of what everybody's experiencing, from a brand perspective today, what is happening out there in my world from a brand view, right? Like, what are the markets that are succeeding and having success that I should, enter in and maybe lean in on at the current time? Or what are some others that maybe we pull back on and maybe take a back seat until we see a bit of a recovery? So I think from a data perspective, it's key to making sure not just the localization is there, but obviously leaning on what's going to work best from an investment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think just to kind of lean in on the overall, intro of what even Global-e is. So as a business, we are, the global leading platform in what it is that we do, which is help brands across the world in many different regions localize their overall, shops, help them really transact from a D2C perspective and break down barriers and, to the point of data, help them be successful. And I think when you look at it right now, we were a business that were founded in Europe, operated in Europe, for, call it the first, 4 or 5 years of our existence, then expanded into the U.S., which is the North America region that I oversee. And then we, recently launched and are starting to see quite an uptick in our business in Japan, our business in Australia, our business in APAC, and all throughout. And we're starting to really see that shift of, brands across the world looking to leverage, an international audience, right? So this is not just obviously U.S. centric. And when you look at it from an employee count, over 800 employees globally, one of the things that, Michael had mentioned was, I was on a border-free platform. This is, part of our acquisition strategy. We are a public company, and we did make a few key acquisitions this year, one of them being Border-Free, who Michael did work with, and then converted them over to the Global-e platform, obviously, to help benefit what we knew we could do from taking them on their current platform to where Global-e was helping. And then, work with a whole bunch of different brands and a bunch of different segments and helping each, and every single one of them obviously put the trust in the platform to help them grow internationally.
Yeah, but I think it's important to mention that we actually decided to convert to Global-e before you bought Border-Free. So it wasn't like this was a forced marriage. There was no shotgun here. Basically, we made the decision because we thought it was best for our business. Then they ended up buying Border-Free. So, and then you just announced earnings, right?
We did, and if it didn't go well, I wouldn't be sitting here. No. So yes, we did. So it was a great day. But I think from a market perspective, we're seeing quite a bit of interest right now from brands across, not just on how do I grow, but how do I become profitable and manage both, right? Because I think the days in the market of just running a top-line growth business and being successful in the public eye is not there anymore. I think it's also, how do we run margin, how do we run EBITDA, how do we keep revenue where it needs to be, and drive a profitable, growth-driven business, which is something that I think every brand and public company has been faced with. And I think even from the brand partners that you're seeing right now, it's It's the margin of growth and the margin of just pure business, profitability, which has become key in the conversation heading into this year.
So why did we partner with Globally? Like I said, we did it prior to their acquisition. Basically because they had proven cross-border expertise. We looked at the plethora of brands that they serviced, and we felt that they could really help us develop our e-commerce business because Pacsun is a North America-based company, and we felt that partnering with somebody who had experience helping other brands develop across the globe, would really help us. And what we really like is the data-backed approach. I've got an IT background, and to me, data is king. Everybody's got an opinion. It's like having a belly button, but data really tells you where it's at. And what I like about them is they were able to look at the data, and we localize, and you'll see the results for each market. And the approach we took was slightly different, and to very, very positive results. And the other thing, when we look at right now, of course, things are tough. You got inflation. We know after this big COVID spurt, basically sales and retail are a little bit soft. So, we can't afford to invest a huge team, to support international, even though it's a big strategic area for our growth. So to be able to go and, I really feel that we have a partnership with Globally because their team, it's almost like they're on our team. They look at the data. We have monthly reviews, and they tell us where we think that we're charging too much, where we think we can improve things. And so it's really like having that partner as an extension of our staff. And because their compensation model is really about, they get a commission on sales, they're incented to actually help grow our sales. And then, the most important thing, anytime you want to do a project, and especially now, everything's IT related, right? And so no matter what we do, can we afford the IT, the CapEx? Now I'm lucky because I have my CIO sitting in the room and she's the best in the industry. But even there, it takes resources. And what we really liked about Globally is we're on Salesforce Commerce Cloud. They had a cartridge, and that cartridge was actually, seamless to implement. We had some performance issues, and what I can really say, and some of the exec team were freaking out because they said, oh my God, we're going into Q4. Well, we had twice weekly meetings, and we solved those, just in no time. And, that's the kind of support that we expect from a vendor, but you don't always get. And I can say, Shirley, my CIO, she doesn't give compliments out easy. She's probably one of the most, tough graders I've ever seen. And she basically made the comment that they were the best project manager and the best implementation she's ever done. And for all the implementations she's done, I think that's a big vote of confidence.
Shirley, we paid him to say that.
Yeah. No, it's true. So, if we look at basically the reason why I picked Globally, the previous gentleman said, look, you want to focus on a few countries, and that's true. We do want to focus on a few countries, but then again, why would you not allow sales in any country? You might put your resources in a few key countries, but basically, people when they know your brand, they want to purchase it. And a lot of overseas students come and they go to their countries. So it's important that basically on checkout that you can localize. Because people can look at your website, they can look at the pictures and fashion, but when they check out, they want to know how much it costs, and that's really where it's important. So the fact that Globally can support 30 languages and over 100 currencies, this really takes the friction out of the checkout process.
And I think on this one, even to chime in, because when you look at the strategy, right, there's always a wholesale, there's a distribution, there's a direct strategy, right? And obviously, I think you can argue, every which way of what is the right strategy. I think they all have a benefit, right? But I think most important, and it's typically a crawl, walk, run strategy, but you need to be able to align your pricing strategy in each and every single region that you're entering, right? So that your customer, your omni, overall vision is there, and that your customer's not trying to play you off of your own brand in a certain region or distributor or wholesale channel. And that's where everything from the second the customer hits the site to the full localization of currency, whether it be a dynamic conversion where you have full price flexibility in a market and you have nothing, in a market, or whether it be that you're fully penetrated in a market and you need to be able to have a fixed price strategy down to a product level to be able to make sure that that customer is not competing against, you, which is critically important as you, move it forward.
Yeah, and so, just to basically tag on what Matt said, basically this is a hyper-localized international checkout. So, they support 150 payment options. I think before in Border-Free, it was 30 payment options. And, this is one of the key pieces of friction, because when people check out, they want to check out with the payment method that they're normally used in their marketplace. So, to us, a large amount of offerings here that were localized was critical. And then you need to do it in the appropriate language, because a lot of people, English is an international language, but if you can do it in their language, it makes things simple. But the most important thing is really the tax and duty propositions, because every country has different tax and duty structures, and the de minimis rules about what comes in duty-free, and the values are different in each country. So basically the platform allows us to actually optimize that for every market, and make sure that we can maximize profit, but also maximize demand.
And I think from a platform perspective, it is one that, everybody runs a different platform, right? Salesforce is a phenomenal platform, and of course, what you're seeing is how we portray it here. We've also built directly into Shopify, right? So Shopify is a native integration, and their international sole provider is something that, of course, we're supporting, both on, call it their 1P and 3P side, which also got introduced in Markets Pro into the market recently, which was great. So I think any way you slice it, no matter which way you're looking at it from a checkout optimization perspective, it is one of the most crucial points, right? So if you don't have that payment method there, if you're not serving what's relevant to that customer in that specific market, if you're not keeping up with local acquiring benefits of just having success and acceptance rates that you may not even see on the surface that's happening behind the scenes, it's going to be key just to unlocking growth automatically through any sort of platform provider out there. And then keeping up with what's actually relevant from a payment perspective. I think buy now, pay laters there's quite a few out there, right? And what is most relevant per market, and which ones do you push in on and make available that's going to have an impact on conversion is key. An impact on conversion is key. And then part of, and yes, with our Border-Free.com acquisition, and I heard, in the previous session, which was around data, right? I think, how do I have and own the data of my consumers is going to be key. And I think one thing at Globally that we've got a very big vision and focus on right now is how to build awareness, right? Borderfree.com existed prior to Globally taking on this business, but we're going to be really doubling down on it. I think when you look at the client base that we have today, walking into this acquisition, I think there's a huge opportunity for brand awareness. For growth, and when you look across the portfolio today, we don't have a client that runs more than a single-digit percentage of traffic across the overall platform that we operate today, across the spectrum of brands that we have on a global basis. So from an overall consumer perspective, one of the things we talked about, or a brand perspective, is traffic. It's getting expensive, right? So how do we help bring that to you for proven cross-border shoppers to make sure that you have the ability to tap into something much larger that is going to drive proven traffic that's almost a self-funded arena, because as Michael mentioned on our model earlier, we are incentivized with our brands, right? When you sell more, we benefit more, which is pulling the rope in the same direction. And if we can bring more traffic in, which is a huge initiative for us to be able to execute on, then we think that's got a ton of value on the backside of it. So expect more to come. And then I think the market trends, right? I think when you look at the macroeconomic trends that we've had, and I just want to share some of the data here because I think it's important, right? On, what are we seeing from an international perspective? What are the complexities that we're seeing from, call it COVID relief, which we all knew was coming at some point, but it also collided with the war in Ukraine. It also collided with inflation. It collided with energy prices. It was, the perfect storm as we saw it last year, right? So I think looking at the strategy of what are you up against, how and what's happening in my arena with other brands, like am I the only one that's struggling in Europe right now? No. Is that answer, am I the only one that's seeing success in Mexico right now? No. All right, so these are the types of insights that we do look at, and we try to study and push and feed into the brands to make sure that they're able to stay ahead of what the current trends and market conditions are. But what we do is we study from a regional perspective, right? And this is Globally data. So we're managing same-store sales across the entire platform, which essentially means mean, same stores that were operative with us, call it year over year, measuring the performance by region to be able to understand how, and from a regional view, are we seeing success, right? And I think in North America, which is obviously what I oversee, we did see a lot of brands right now that were doing quite well in the US and doing quite well in Canada and in Mexico. And I think what made it a bit more challenging was, a year of 2022 is, well, what's happening internationally? Why is it declining in Europe? And why are we seeing a bigger dip in Eastern Europe? And why are we, help me learn and understand what's going on? And that's where we come into play. So this is just a bit of a regional view for you. I think when you start to look at the two hardest hit markets right now, you see, Europe and APAC as the two that we've seen, a slight decline in. And then I think what we've started to see is, and you can jump to the next one here, is as you look at it from a market perspective, right? I think when you really start to understand, well, what's happening and how do I react to the conditions that I'm seeing? This is the type of level of detail that, I think is critically important for brands to understand, right? Because this is not a single shop. This is not a single, brand. This is over 1,000 enterprise brands operating in over 6 different regions throughout the world. So you're really getting a view and insight into, where do I put my investment, right? What are the markets I should be thinking about and strategizing about? And I know I mentioned Mexico quite a bit, but it is one right now that I think the strategy into Mexico has always been there, but it's always been behind the UK, Australia, Canada, and what typically brands would invest in initially because it's English speaking, it's easy to get after. But I think when you start to look at what's happening with the macro trends right now and what's happening specifically in Europe, you start to see folks opening up their eyes to other regions and kind of leaning in a bit more in markets that you may not have in the past. GCC countries as well. I think we're seeing quite a significant rebound in the GCC countries that are flourishing. To be honest, you start to see in APAC more closures that are starting to release. But I think these are the types of things that brands are looking to understand on how and what to do from an overall international perspective, so that you're not entering and spending with those sunk costs that had been mentioned in the previous speaking before what strategically you want to get after. Cool. So I think, and I know we talked about this one. I mean, we can tag team this one, but I think from an overall, Michael and Shirley and the entire team at Pacsun has leaned on us, as do all of our brands right now. But it's how do we, number one, set an optimal proposition based off of data, market by market, to understand, do we embed duties and taxes? Do we show taxes at the point of checkout? Do we just embed duty? Do we make it optional, where markets may respond better to that, right? So we sit on this data, we feed that in market by market, we then put it in front of Michael and the team and say, what do you think? And they may say, I think you're crazy in some of these markets, and then we'll lean in back on them and say, we think you're crazy, and we'll have a bit of a debate. And then we measure, right? I think the previous session mentioned a lot about testing, a lot about how do you test, how do you make sure you measure, how do you make sure you analyze and feed back the results of what you're seeing in some markets that may be responding well, in others that might not be, right? We're always happy to learn ourselves with each one of our brands also on what is happening uniquely to them, but that is, a strategy that is going to be key to making sure that you have that white glove service by your side, managing it almost as an extension of the team.
Yeah, it's important to understand this isn't a set and forget type of environment. You can go and implement something like border free or globally, but you really have to constantly go in and do testing. And we've actually noticed that where the globally team has made recommendations, and basically, it's amazing how a small tweak can actually result in a big change. I can tell you how great this is, but within 3 months of partnering with Globally, we've seen our checkout conversion rate increase 36%. And I think this is because of a number of things, but basically payment methods, languages, and also basically putting the pricing appropriate for each market. And the number of orders year over year actually increased 19%, which is kind of phenomenal. And when you think that the US dollar has appreciated 20% against most currencies over the past year, that means we became 20% more expensive, yet we still saw this kind of performance. But most important, we're not in here to do it for fun, we're here to do it for profit. And we've seen our revenue increase 18% year over year. And so there's been significant international growth. Now, look, this still is a small piece of the pie, so I don't want to overstate it. But these are markets that we really didn't have a big penetration. And, Pacsun is basically, it's a North America brand, but because of Roblox, we actually have an exposure worldwide. And in Australia, where we did some tweaking with pricing and duties, we've seen our conversion rate increase almost 500%, and revenue increase 274%. And Australia is a fairly big market, and it's relevant to us, but it's some place that we really hadn't done much, and so we're very, very, pleased with that performance. UK likewise, and everyone knows, after Brexit, the UK is not doing great economically, but our conversion rates increased almost 140%, and we've had a 100% increase in revenue. Canada, which is our neighbor to the north, basically, and that's one of our bigger markets, we've still seen conversion rate double and a big increase in revenue. And Matt mentioned Mexico. Mexico is a great market, and it's big, it's got an affinity, and we've seen good performance there. And one of the interesting ones was Israel. I mean, we never really did a lot, but we've seen conversion rate increase and almost doubling the revenue in Israel. And so that is actually very, it made us very happy.
Go Israel. Yeah. We had our development team in Israel make all those purchases. No, we're just kidding.
Well, if you do, just keep it going, man.
Yes.
It's okay, We'll take it where we can get it, right? So, it's funny because I heard the previous panel basically said, hey, China, you won't hear much about it. Well, maybe we're crazy, but we launched in China. We did a test. Because what's interesting is basically Red or Xiaohongshu, which is kind of the Instagram of China, we actually had organic content there. So overseas Chinese students would buy from Pacsun, buy Fear of God Essentials, and they would basically post it there. So we did a study and we decided, well, let's do a test. And we picked Douyin. So Douyin, for what you don't know, is the TikTok of China. And Douyin basically is the fastest growing e-commerce platform in China. They have about $260 billion annually US in sales. So that's about 70% of Amazon's business in the United States. So it's huge. And so we decided, look, you had COVID lockdowns in China, and so we couldn't visit there. But we decided, well, and who can afford brick and mortar? And we couldn't go and visit sites in China. But we thought it would be a relevant market, so let's test it. So basically, we launched a Douyin store. And, so when you look at live streaming, it's kind of interesting. There's like 3 pillars of revenue. One is where you get your own live stream, and you get your own hosts, and they either stream from a Pacsun store here in the US or from a studio that we built in Shanghai, or you get a KOL or key opinion leader, a celebrity to live stream for you. And then, or you create content, which is videos, and people can click on the video and shop, and then, or they could just go to your store. Well, we really didn't do much. We really only did celebrities, and we were able to generate $2 million in sales. And this is just, with a small effort. And actually, one live stream, we did about $700,000 gross sales in 4 hours, which is kind of insane. And we've generated 30,000 followers, and this is really without trying. Now our store rating is at 4.79 out of 5, and it's important that you retain that rating because if you get below, people don't want to work with you because you pay these influencers basically a commission. And it's interesting because when we found out that we live stream from our stores here in the U.S. and it's 7 a.m. in the morning in China, but we actually had the best number of followers. And so our strategy is looking at Fear of God Essentials. It's called the Uniform in China, and it's probably about a $250 million business. And so if we could leverage that kind of as a Trojan horse to help generate traffic, and then basically expose the Chinese consumer to the different brands we have. And we also went to USC and we hired some interns, Chinese overseas students, and had them post on Xiaohongshu, our little red book, to bring brand awareness. And the model is actually twofold. One is basically we actually ship from our distribution center in Groveport, Ohio, and it's kind of amazing because we did a great deal with SF Express, and I know they're head of strategies here, and it's almost cheaper for us to ship a package from Chicago to Shanghai than it is for me to ship it from New York to LA. So the economics are there. But the problem is this is good for testing product. And then we opened up a bonded warehouse in China. So basically we ship goods there and that we think or that we know or work that we've tested. And then from there basically the economics are amazing. It's about $2 to actually pick and pack and ship kilogram box to anywhere in China, which so the economics are actually fairly good. So we're pretty excited by this, and we've now that we've done the test and it's been successful, we're going to actually double down on our launch. I mean, that's an example of the live streamers we have, and you can see that in the studio, and just it's really interesting because basically they sit there and they talk about the product and go over it in detail. Now, what's amazing though is you'll get this big demand, but then they have what's called a remorse period, where before you actually ship it, the customer can cancel the order. And so you get about a 30% cancellation, but still, it's just amazing that if you get the right celebrity, how much demand that you can actually generate. And the way the Douyin algorithms work, we have 30,000 followers. As you increase followers, you become more relevant, and you'll actually get more traffic. So, I know that, there's political tensions with China, and not a lot of people are going there. Maybe we're crazy, but we always march to a different drum at Pacsun. So we're excited about this.
And Michael, I know we've tried to have you here for about 3 years straight. So thank you for coming, and I know you'll be able to hang around a little bit. And yes, I can't wait to meet Shirley as well. She's the taskmaster, we've heard. So thank you guys so much.